Pope Francis prays for prisoners in overcrowded jails.
Tanta gente lì, c'è il pericolo in questa pandemia.
At his daily morning mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father urged governments around the world to come up with creative solutions as many encounter a high risk of coronavirus infection. Violent riots have erupted in many prisons around the world within the last few weeks over fears of the virus. Father Brian Gowans, president of the International Commission of Catholic Prison Pastoral Care, joins us now from Kirkcaldy, Scotland. Thank you for joining us, Father.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Father, I know this is not the first time that Pope Francis prayed, especially for inmates during the pandemic. How is the coronavirus crisis? How is it affecting prisoners' lives?
Well, I suspect, like everybody else, only you can multiply it by any number you care to think of. When you're in isolation, it's difficult enough. When you're in isolation in a prison, your mind works all kinds of weird and wonderful tricks. And for some, it will be a very anxious time, I'm sure.
Are prison chaplains still able to visit the prisons during this time?
By and large, yes. Although some too are having to self-isolate, some are already showing symptoms, some will have underlying health issues, so they are not allowed in. But the ones who are hale and hearty, as we say here in Scotland, provided they keep the social distancing measures, they have protective clothing like masks and gloves, then yeah, they are allowed in, and indeed they're warmly welcomed by both the prisoners and indeed the staff.
Well, Father, I know you have almost 30 years of experience being a prison chaplain. Can you talk about the work that you do and how it's different from a diocesan priest?
Well, I think it's one of these jobs you either love it or hate it. It's what we call the Marmite job. If you hate it, you don't hang around. But most of us love it and certainly don't want to leave it. I can hear it in Pope Francis when he's speaking and in the way he acts. He's always engaging with prisoners and their families and the staff. That's because he himself, as a young priest, and indeed not so young priest, worked in the prisons. He knows what it's like. It's different because you actually see the gospel come alive. It's not a book that you read, it's something you live, and you see it in the lives and the hearts of the prisoners. It's wonderful.
What do you enjoy most about it?
What I enjoy most about it is the ability to sit down and listen to someone's story. You have to be a good listener, and you have to get to know someone. And as you get to know them, you can then ask that all-important question, tell me your story. And the minute you say that, there's that little odd look, that glint of suspicion, well, understandably, but because they know you and trust you, the floodgates open and they tell you your story. And some of these stories are really fascinating.
Well, Father, thank you so much for joining us today and your insight and all that you do. Father Brian Gowans, president of the International Commission of Catholic Prison Pastoral Care.
Thank you for having me.